배가 이렇게 가잖아. 이렇게 조그만 배가 이렇게 큰 거구만. 바닷물에 그 물살이 있잖아. 쫙 가는 그 이렇게 뛰어내리고 싶더라. 그렇게 멋있어. 뭔 말인지 알지? 자연이 너무 멋있는 눈물이 난다더니 진짜. 시글이야? 사이먼? 시글? 뭐야 저거? I love you, Simon. I love you, son.
Ladies and gentlemen, please pay close attention to the following passenger safety announcement. This vessel sails under regulations set forth by the United States Coast Guard. Emergency exits are located on the first deck. Life rings are located outside on each deck, and life jackets are located under seats in marked bins throughout the cabins. Children must be supervised by an adult at all times on this voyage. In the unlikely event of an emergency, passengers should remain calm and follow crew member instructions. We recommend you remain seated for the duration of the voyage. However, if you find it necessary to move about the cabin, please do so with extreme caution and always use the provided handrails. Be extra careful near stairwells. For your safety, please do not stand on the benches and please refrain from smoking anywhere on the vessel.
Under the Golden Gate Bridge, around famous Alcatraz Island, and get a unique seaside view of the beautiful city on the bay. From San Francisco to Alcatraz to the Golden Gate Bridge and beyond, we'll be covering a lot of territory today, a lot of history, and a lot of stories. San Francisco is a port city, a city with salt water in her veins. Take a good look, my friends, for this is no ordinary view. Now, the first thing I want you to do is take a deep breath of that fresh breeze. But hold on tight. The water can get choppy, even on the calmest days, so be careful if you're walking around the deck. As we pull out of the dock, look out the windows and down into the water to see some frisky sea lions. If you miss them now, we'll see some later as we return. If they're hiding today, you can always hear them. now leaving Fisherman's Wharf behind. Right now, we're passing a number of interesting sights. Look on the left or port side of the ship towards the city. Do you see a large gray battleship? That is a restored Liberty ship, the SS Jeremiah O'Brien. Next to it, tied to the pier, is a diesel submarine, the USS Pampanito. Both vessels were active in World War II. Now look out the right side of the boat, also called starboard, toward the bay. Look for a lone island. It's not much more than a rock with a few buildings perched on top. That rock is the Rock, the island of Alcatraz. We will get closer later on in our tour. Now look out the front of the bow of the boat. If it's not too foggy, the bright red bridge you see is the famous Golden Gate Bridge. Look left, to the port side of the ship, toward the shore. Find the three tall masts of the old sailing ship Balclutha. The Balclutha is a steel-hulled, square-rigged cargo ship that first sailed from Wales in 1887. She carried a crew of 26 men, a load of coal and other goods bound for San Francisco. Since then, her journey has taken her as far as Australia, Cape Horn, and Europe many times over. Today, she is designated as a National Historic Monument. To the left of the Balclutha is a big white ferry boat with a black smokestack. That's the Eureka, a paddle-wheel steam ferry boat that dates back to the 1890s. Before the Great Bay Bridge was built, the Eureka transported train cars, Model T Fords, commuting passengers, and even cattle into the city. Both ships are part of the San Francisco Maritime National Historical Park, also known as Hyde Street Pier. Hyde Street Pier is located at the end of the Hyde Street cable car line. You can visit the park year-round. From here, you can also see the large sign of the Ghirardelli Chocolate Factory. It's atop the red brick of the building rising above the ships, to the left. San Francisco is famous for great food, and Ghirardelli chocolate is part of that legend. Now look farther along the shoreline. You'll see large buildings with red doors. Those are the piers of Fort Mason, one of several military locations we'll see around the bay today. John Martini is a San Francisco historian.
For most of its history, Fort Mason was called a port of embarkation. It's where supplies and men were loaded aboard ships and then sailed out. World War I, World War II, Korea, sailed out here for war in the Pacific. And then many of them, but not all, came back again to the big warehouses.
Today, those piers and warehouses are a hive of activity for some of San Francisco's environmental organizations, theatrical troops, and small private companies. To the right of Fort Mason, you can see the Marina District. The rows of elegant homes make the marina look like solid ground. But don't be fooled. The Marina District is actually land reclaimed from the bay. It is built on tidal flats that were filled in to create a temporary city for the Panama Pacific International Exposition of 1915. Look for the large, dusty orange dome building set in from the shore. It is the Palace of Fine Arts, and the only building from the Pan Pacific Expo that remains today. American architect Bernard Maybeck designed it in a distinctive Roman style. San Francisco. Let's go back in time to 1776. 3,000 miles on the Atlantic coast, America's 13 colonies were about to start the American Revolution by declaring their independence from England. But here, on the Pacific shore, Spanish conquistadors were seeking out new territory to claim for Spain. The bay may seem large, but it wasn't always so obvious to find. As you look at the shore, let's listen to an archival interview with John Martini, a California historian.
For 200 years, Spanish ships have been sailing up and down the California coast, but they stayed so far off the coast that none had ever come close enough to see the entrance to the harbor. The first ship that actually entered San Francisco was called the San Carlos, and a little 80-foot long packet boat. Lieutenant Juan Manuel de Ayala in command, piloted the little boat through the straits, heading to the FNU for Golden Gate, treacherous, rocky straits, anchored off what's now Angel Island, and spent the next 8 weeks charting the bay and naming the geographical features.
After that first boat came into the bay, a year later, on March 28, 1776, Captain Juan Bautista de Tena stood on the boat where the Presidio is now. Imagine him looking down at the narrow entrance to the bay far below him. On that spot, he planted a cross in the road and established a fort. The word Presidio translates as Army Post in Spanish, and the cross marked the northernmost point of Spain's vast empire. Father Pedro Font, who accompanied the aircraft, had more of an eye for natural beauty than military strategy. That day, he wrote in his diary that if the bay
Could be well said like Europe. There would not be anything more beautiful in the world.
he was quite a visionary, because the beauty that Father Font saw was more rugged than the beauty we see today. Look again at the forests of the Presidio. 200 years ago, those ridges were barren rock and sand dunes. The first trees were planted there in the 1880s, a century after De Anza planted his cross. Today, the Presidio is now under the protection of the National Park Service, and many of the historic military homes have been restored to housing for local residents. It is a popular destination for hikes. If you like movies, It is the location of Industrial Light and Magic, the special effects company that made unforgettable films like Star Wars, the Indiana Jones series, and Pirates of the Caribbean. Let your eyes sweep across the bay. We are traveling back over 150 years ago, when San Francisco was a sleepy town. A beautiful bay, in the middle of nowhere. That was 1847. But in 1848... Gold! Gold! Gold on the American River! San Francisco's days as a quiet town will go on forever. At first, the town almost disappeared. Everybody in San Francisco had to pick and shovel, headed for the hills. The editor of the local newspaper wrote in an editorial,
The stores are closed, and places of business vacated. As if a curse had arrested our onward course of enterprise. Everything is dull, monotonous, dead.
that editor then looked into it and headed for the gold fields himself. But the town didn't stay deserted for long. Young people from all over the world came here to San Francisco. In just 2 years, the population skyrocketed from 500 to 25,000 people back at the city. Life in San Francisco was truly wild and woolly. At the heart of the madness was a stretch of park. In memoirs written years later, some people recall it as a slice of heaven, while others remembered it as a corner of hell.
I have seen purer liquors, better cigars, finer tobacco, truer guns and pistols, larger dirks and bowie knives, and prettier courtesans here in San Francisco than at any place I have ever visited.
A village of every nationality held high carnival there. It was a grand theater of crime, licentiousness, debauchery, insanity, misery, poverty, wealth, profanity, blasphemy, and death.
Thousands of fortune seekers came to San Francisco during the gold rush, and most people arrived by boat. Ships from all over the world tried to get into this harbor. One historian estimated that over 700 ships piled up along the coast during the first 6 years of the gold rush. Now look ahead at the south or left end of the Golden Gate Bridge. Situated underneath that arch, you'll see a building. It may look small beside the bridge, but in its day, it was an impressive symbol of strength.
That's Old Fort Point. As you get closer to it, you'll notice there are 3 levels with big black squares in its wall. Each one of those is a gun port. And behind each one of those gun ports is a huge cast iron cannon, the biggest of which could fire a 128-pound cannonball about 2 miles. Even the roof of the fort was ringed with cannon.
Fort Point was completed in 1861. It stood guard over the narrow mouth of the bay, protecting San Francisco's vital port and California's immense wealth of gold and silver against intruders. However, no intruders ever came, and, like every other fort around the bay, Fort Point has never fired a shot in anger. Today, park rangers in full Civil War uniforms give tours of the fort daily. They can teach you how to load and fire a Civil War cannon. approaching the Golden Gate Bridge. Look ahead at the front of the boat. Today, the Golden Gate Bridge seems perfectly suited to this route, exactly as it stands. But try to imagine it not being there. When plans for the bridge were first proposed, many said it couldn't be built. Some even said it shouldn't be built. Early environmentalists didn't like the idea of the bridge they believed was ruining the natural beauty of the Golden Gate. American author Catherine Gerald was one of many who expressed opposition at the time.
You have one of the most romantic approaches in all geography. Why spoil it? In the interest of your own uniqueness, dear San Francisco, do not bridge the Golden Gate.
The War Department in Washington, D.C. objected by claiming that it would be a serious hazard to airplane navigation. Well, despite the protests, there were many people who wanted the bridge. First among the supporters was the engineer Joseph Behrman Strauss. He not only designed the bridge, he was obsessed with it. He wasn't a man to give in to an engineering challenge or political opposition. Encouraged by Strauss, the voters in the region approved the bridge. Construction began in 1933.
The design was finally developed actually turned out to be one of the most graceful, delicate objects of architectural art. So created at scale is just immense. The tower is over 700 feet in height, main span 4,200 feet long, and no one had ever built a bridge like this before. Some people say we could never build it again.
Look at the tower at the San Francisco end of the bridge. Then look down at the concrete foundation the tower is standing on. This was the first great challenge, building a concrete pier in water more than 100 feet deep. Enormous temporary walls were built, enclosing an area in the bay the size of a football field. The water was pumped out, and then the concrete was poured. Next came the two towers. When they were completed, thousands of steel strands were bundled together to form the enormous main cable that connected. Finally, the road itself was built, starting at both ends and working toward the middle to keep the bridge in balance. It's easy to describe. It was far from easy to accomplish. Imagine working there, day after day, in the cold, in the fog, and the rain. On major construction projects in those days, experience had shown that one workman usually died for every $1 million spent. The budget for the bridge was $35 million, but Joseph Strauss was determined that 35 lives would not be lost on his bridge. A safety net was fabricated and suspended below the workmen, and although 11 men did die during construction, 19 men fell into the safety net and were saved. Those 19 lucky men formed a very special club. It's called the Halfway to Hell Club. Of the 11 men who lost their lives during construction, 10 of them died in one accident when a 10-ton scaffold fell and tore through the net. The Golden Gate Bridge was completed in less than 5 years, in May 1937. Joseph Strauss let the world know exactly how he felt.
The Golden Gate Bridge. The bridge which could not and should not be built, which the War Department would not permit, which the rocky foundation of the pier base would not support, which would have no traffic to justify it, which would ruin the beauty of the Golden Gate, stands before you in all its majestic splendor, in complete refutation of every attack made upon it.
Look up at the Twin Towers. They rise nearly 750 feet above the water. Let your eyes follow the bridge from shore to shore. The roadway extends for 1.25 miles without touching down on solid ground. Look at the two main cables. There's enough wire there to wrap around the planet 3 times. Each strand in the cable is secured steel reinforcements in a 50,000-ton foundation buried deep underground. Impressive numbers, but numbers alone can't tell the story of the Golden Gate Bridge. There's more to it than steel and concrete. For many, it has become a symbol of America's hope, as
awe-inspiring and recognizable as the Statue of Liberty.
When you're standing on that deck, you can feel it vibrate. You can feel it sway back and forth in the wind. The entire bridge hums like a harpsichord. Like and it makes you feel very small, and standing looking up at those huge towers and listening to the whole thing moaning in the wind. It's awe-inspiring.
That name, by the way, came long before the bridge. John C. Fremont, soldier, explorer, and adventurer, named the entrance to San Francisco Bay the Golden Gate back in 1846. That was even before gold was discovered in California. Look to the north end of the Golden Gate Bridge, the side opposite San Francisco, and you'll see a rocky point with a building on it, just below the bridge. That's Line Point, the other side of the Golden Gate's entrance, along with Fort Point. Look again at the hill to the left of Line Point, the Marin Headlands. Spend an afternoon on the hiking trails there, and you might see deer or even bobcat. Climb to the top of Hawk Hill any time of the year, and you'll have a glorious view of the Golden Gate. Visit in October, and you'll see magnificent birds of prey. Every fall, more than 100,000 hawks, eagles, and falcons soar overhead on their migration south. Now, let's all take a moment to enjoy this magnificent panorama. If the sun is out, you'll see sails dotting the bay. In addition to its other qualities, the bay is a challenging playground for sailors and windsurfers alike.
Well, that area between Crissy Field and Golden Gate Bridge and Fort Point has become one of the top windsurfing locations in the world. It's caused by the wind that just howling through the Golden Gate, the mix of waters trying to force their way into the harbor and also outside the things. The more churned up, the better. But it's not for amateurs.
Now we are out on the bay where the water can become choppy and treacherous. In the 1850s, a number of lighthouses were built along the California coast to help guide boats into the bay. 3 of the lighthouses are still here in the bay. But even with lighthouses, buoys, and foghorns, navigating the narrow harbor entrance is no easy feat. Thick fog, shifting currents, and overly bold captains resulted in shipwrecks. In 1901, the wreck of the steamer City of Rio de Janeiro was the worst local maritime disaster ever recorded. The steamer usually transported Chinese immigrants across the Pacific. But in February 1901, there was an American diplomat aboard. He was returning to attend President William McKinley's inaugural ball in Washington, D.C. The ship was already 2 days late when it arrived to the bay. So Captain William Ward decided to proceed through the Golden Gate in heavy fog. In the early morning hours, the Rio de Janeiro struck the rocks. The ship did not have watertight bulkheads, and it sank in a mere 10 minutes. Many of the 210 passengers and crew were below decks and couldn't escape. 128 lives were lost.
The sea can be dangerous, but you might be grateful that we are out on the water right now, because one thing San Francisco is famous for is surviving earthquakes. Look at the city skyline. The Great Quake of 1906 began at 12 minutes past 5 a.m. on April 18th, when the earth rumbled and rolled and knocked San Francisco flat. In 1906, the quake was bad, but the real disaster was the fire that followed. Look at the pointed spire of the Transamerica Pyramid near downtown. Imagine that entire area engulfed in flames. And not just a firestorm. It burned for 3 days and 2 nights. By the time the fire burned itself out, much of San Francisco's once proud downtown was little more than rubble. 28,000 buildings had been destroyed, and 250,000 people were homeless. Tens of thousands of San Franciscans lived for months in tents while the city was rebuilt. The damage was awesome. But in just 3 years, 20,000 new buildings went up, and San Francisco was back on its feet again. Its citizens knew that their city could survive just about anything. The Great Quake of 1906, San Francisco's worst earthquake, was certainly not the first, and unfortunately, not the last. Look out the windows toward the city and the Marina District. The earth shook again in October 1989, and it was the Marina District that suffered the greatest damage in that quake. The man-made land reclaimed from the bay rolled like ocean waves, and buildings collapsed into rubble. Stuart Brand was driving his car there when the earthquake struck.
I just happened to be driving down Marina Boulevard, and suddenly I thought the steering was going out of the car as I was swaying from lane to lane.
Lee Kang Wong was also here during the quake of 1989, which struck right about dinner time.
I was just about ready to cook my rice, and all of a sudden, the walls and the chandelier began to tremble, and my husband yelled at me, "There's an earthquake." I just ducked under with the dining table and turned off all the electricity, and we didn't have dinner that night.
After the gold rush, San Francisco grew into a cosmopolitan city with impressive mansions, grand theaters, and elegant hotels. But the spirit of the first settlers still echoes in the area's Spanish place names. Names such as, well, San Francisco for one. And there's Tiburon, which is Spanish for shark. Even the name Alcatraz comes from the Spanish name for pelicans, Los Alcatraces. We're passing another place with a name that came from the Spanish. Over to the left is the island the Spanish called La Isla de Nuestra Señora de los Angeles, the island of Our Lady of the Angels. Nowadays, we just call it Angel Island. 2,000 years ago, Angel Island was home to the Miwok Indians. The Miwok lived the good life on the small island paradise, hunting in the island's forests and fishing in the bay. Later, the Spanish used it as a military base, and later still, the U.S. Army set up shop. Its open spaces are lined with hiking and bicycling trails, and it is once again an island paradise in the middle of the bay. You could visit it today by taking a blue and gold fleet ferry. But there's another chapter in Angel Island's history that began in the late 1800s, when the United States government built an immigration center on the island. Angel Island became the Ellis Island of the West. For more than 50 years, thousands of Asian immigrants passed through Angel Island. Many of them were held on the island until they could prove that they had relatives already living in the United States.
My name is John Geo Chin. I came here in 1924. I went to the island, what they call Angel Island.
The immigrants were questioned for hours, and their answers were compared with statements made by other family members.
First, they asked my names, my parents' names, and brothers and sisters. And later on, they asked about the house, how many doors, how many windows.
The price of a wrong answer was deportation. But today,